start by, taking a look at the year in review. Talk to us about some of the loopholes that you saw, at the start of the year. There was all of these allegations of cartels and, the cheating within the ministry and within the education sector. So once the year began, what was the plan of office, and what did you foresee in terms of just some of the many changes we have seen in the course of the year?
All of us, whatever we do, whatever role we play in this society, and it doesn't matter in terms of importance, seniority, or the earnings in that office, or power, or discretion, or whatever we do, is an opportunity we have been given by God Almighty, our Creator, to serve our country by serving our fellow men. And as I've often argued, there is nothing more nobler than to be asked to serve your country in whatever capacity, whether as a policeman, soldier, cabinet minister, teacher, clerk, whatever. So I am grateful, and I will everlastingly be grateful for the opportunity that the president has given me to serve my country. He had millions of people to choose from. To have given me the opportunity to serve my country, especially in this particular docket, I am grateful to him. Secondly, I need to locate this in the context of what a lot of people do not understand, how a presidential system of government functions. In 2010, when we enacted the Constitution, we moved away completely to a presidential system of government. The closest or the purest form of that is what is seen in the United States of America. In the US, cabinet secretaries are referred to as the president's cabinet for this simple reason, that the president contests an election, enters into an agreement with the people, and then he now has to deliver on the promises. He has a plan, and he hires or he gets program officers to implement that plan. There is nothing as a cabinet minister you will do in a presidential system of government that is outside the president's script. So what I think everyone should be asking me, or what we should all be asking, is what was the president's plan in reforming education, and how has that plan been implemented? The president has always had a reform agenda. And if you look at President Kenyatta's administration in the last 4 years, you can describe it in just simple one word: service. The president's centerpiece in the management of the country is built around service. That is the origin of Huduma Center. That's the origin of the transformation you have seen in service delivery across the board, in security, in environment, in the change of ease of doing business and how we are doing, in the power connection across the country. It's basically centered around service, taking service to the people so that the people are served. And the people include our children in schools, our teachers, our parents, and so on, improving how they are served so that their expectations can be met. That is the president's focus, really. And for us in the Ministry of Education, the president gave us a script. The script was this: I've observed the system, I've observed how the examinations are administered, I have looked at this thing for the last 3 years. I now must start walking the path of reform, and my instructions are as follows. All these things we have been able to do, all these things, is the president's script, written because of the focus the president has towards reform. And there are a lot more details. The public sees examinations and all this. There are so many details in this that the public does not see. For example, and then that's why I would like to spend more time myself talking about those things. The president's focused on the new presidential initiative on special needs education. For the first time ever, the president is ring-fencing funds directly to go to special needs education. The president insisted that even in the structure of exams, we must pay attention to special needs children, and therefore design a new examination framework for special needs. It's a very comprehensive plan that the president came up with to try and ensure that we achieve comprehensive reform. So those of us like myself, as cabinet minister, I am the president's program officer. The president says this way, and we proceed. So when we began in the beginning of the year, the president had already called General Kaiseri, the Minister for Interior, and myself, and told us in very clear terms that madness of examination cheating will not happen another time.
So let's talk about cheating and exam irregularities. We saw great success with the results that were released this year. Yeah. So We saw what was there in the media, but perhaps from what you can tell us about what the cartels were like, what was happening, and how you were able to dismantle that.
At all times, all examination systems around the world have got several risks. If you study these systems across the world, you will notice in China, in parts of Asia, and so on, always those examination cycles come with, all manner of risks. So that is why, because in the past the system of management had been weak and did not anticipate some of those risks, it became vulnerable to interferences by cartels and by people who, of course, had interests that we all know and now understand, interfere with the credibility of the exam or try to rig the examination, as it were, which in most cases came up with, incredible results, as it was. So we looked at that across the board. We looked at the whole cycle, as it were. And the foundation of that transformation is looking at the integrity of the institution that is supposed to manage that particular cycle, which is the Kenya National Examinations Council. When the president gave us an assignment, General Kaiseri and myself, we started by doing a security analysis of the Kenya National Examinations Council. We put together teams. We worked on this with my colleague General Kaiseri on this matter and made several conclusions. There are certain fundamental systemic failures in this organization. It has no capability to actually administer a credible exam. We must begin to reconstruct it. And to reconstruct it requires radical change and boldness, as it were. So we agreed with my colleague General Kaiseri, we have to proceed. My view is, in dismantling the Kenya National Examinations Council, which is a decision the president took and insisted we have to do it, in reorganizing it, which is a decision the president took and insisted we have to make sure that we have credible people running the Kenya National Examinations Council. We went in there. The system, I said this in Parliament, I think it's now, an open secret, that we decided the exam that had been said could not be trusted because the people who said it could not be trusted, and the system was leaking like a sieve. So we discarded the exam altogether, working with the board, and decided we are going to set a new exam, which is exactly what we did. We worked so hard, and I must pause here and tell you this. Much as the public will say what they say at the moment, it will be the height of dishonesty on my part if I didn't say this to the people of Kenya. I am so grateful to God for the strong and solid leadership of the president. You need political will. You can't move forward on this thing. That's why I told you, if it is your plan as a minister, it can't work. It is the owner of the plan who is the one who has a covenant with the people of Kenya. Once the president took a decision that he wanted a radical change in the manner in which the examinations were going to be done, he went to Parliament during the State of the Nation address and promised the country that he's going to undertake to be sure that the exam is going to be credible. Then we worked on the plan together. Number two, I am so grateful to the men and women we ended up with as the new board, led by Professor Magoha. Those are great Kenyans, solid, straightforward people, determined and focused on doing the right thing. Then my colleagues at the ministry, it's a huge team, and my colleagues in the security sector. I worked very closely with the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Boynet, to whom I'm really, really grateful, because he's a real, sincere and serious guy. I mean, I've learned to like him. So we went throughout this exercise, as you now saw it and what the public can see. There's a lot of stuff going on in the background, most of which I will not really go into. And then we decided, a lot of people ask me, why was I going? I went to containers and people are saying, they've never seen a minister going to look at the exams and so on. So I keep asking them, what do you think I'm paid to do? I am paid to sit at Jogo House and read newspapers or count people, greet people and have tea. That's not what I'm paid to do.
So hands-on. All right. Yeah. I'd like us to talk about, the ranking system, because there's a good number of people that believe that was part of fueling the cheating process in the country. We now have the ranking law. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that, and whether you think ranking, fuels the cheating process. And now with the law, what do you think?
The proposal on ranking is just astounding. Talk to serious educationists. Let me ask you a very basic question. Who does that kind of thing? Have you ever seen the British government releasing results and ranking schools? Have you ever seen anybody doing those kinds of things we are doing? This thing if people were to be honest, is driven by unscrupulous private school system in this country who have bought their way all the time. And there are not many. They could probably be 1% of the private school system. Private enterprise in education is very honest and credible. There's 1% of it that is not. And has driven this thing over the years that you always, must rank. Talk to educationists, talk to educational researchers, talk to people who know this thing and understand it. They will tell you it's a joke, the way we go about it. It had come to a point where we even vulgarize the efforts of the children themselves, so that we drive or we drill, we espouse road learning as the only way of life. We wake up our kids at 4 a.m. in the morning so that they can go to class and get the marks. And we're not asking them to get the marks for their own sake. It's for our own sake, so that our school can be ranked on top and therefore can get more kids next year and rake in more money. It's dishonesty. The truth is, what do we lose when we don't rank? What do we lose? Because you see, performance, and when you're looking at learning outcomes, it actually drills down to the individual learner and the abilities of the individual, as it were. What all of us, parents, teachers, educationists, education managers, what we should all be concerned about is our children and the growth and development of our children. The academic or the intellectual aspect of your life is not necessarily the most important thing that you need to succeed in this life. You can succeed in many other ways. Those who succeed in this life are not necessarily the paragons who clocked in the A's in everything. Your ability, the way God has created you and given you an ability to achieve certain things, may lie elsewhere. So why are we driving our children to this madness of insisting, oh, you must get all A's, and you either get the A's or you don't come to my home?
So now that it is law, and you're talking about finding more scientific ways of doing the ranking, what next? What would your proposal be in terms of doing it differently? Because you've told us you disagree with the concept of ranking. So what's the direction the ministry is going to take? I
will work with the stakeholders. The law that has been passed requires that we work with stakeholders. I'm going to hold a meeting in January with the civil society in the education sector, educationists and educational researchers. I mean, we have universities that have got very solid professors in education who have been doing this thing for, donkey years. I'll sit around the table with all these people. That's what that law requires me to do, so that we can develop a basis on which you can actually rank. Are we going to rank on the basis of scores, or are we going to rank on the basis of other things? I don't know. I cannot tell you that now, because the law has just been passed and it requires me to hold consultations. I will hold those consultations, listen to the knowledgeable people, and then come up with a basis that will be acceptable to everyone. Then we'll decide what to do thereafter. Once there's a basis, I will be advised. Even the regulations, by the way, now, our constitution requires that we have to espouse public participation. I am going to ensure that when we develop the regulations on ranking, again, we go through a very consultative process, so that the parents, the educationists, and even our children participate in that before I publish the regulations. We go forward. If that proposal continues that way, fine. If the stakeholders feel, because I have met a huge number of stakeholders who think they actually want to push for an amendment of that law. As government now, we are in a democratic environment, and democracy is government by deliberation, which means it's government by discussing. So we are discussing. I'm discussing with the stakeholders. Then I will figure out what to do.
All right. Transition rates, what are your thoughts on that? Even in the just released KCPE results, not everybody is going to get an opportunity to go into high schools. What are your thoughts on what happens to those that are not able to move from one level of education to the next?
Well, first of all, it's a concern to everyone. And most of all, and I need to point out this, one of the directives we are working hard on is the president's demand on us. And again, it's in his plan. The president's education plan requires that we achieve 100% transition by 2018. We are on course. It's concerning to all of us that we have some of our kids who are not going to get from one places. But bear in mind one thing, our transition rate is the highest in the continent. This year we are achieving about nearly 87. We will actually, during the selection process, we were looking at about 86, but I can see clearly that pushing some of the schools we are going to achieve about 87. But we are not satisfied. I mean, the president is not satisfied with that. He doesn't want the 13% who are left out are too many. That's what he has told he has told me explicitly that 10% is too high. Even 1% is, I can't live with. So we've now mobilized resources. In the supplementary budget, we have an allocation of 5 billion shillings, which we are going to use in infrastructural expansion. We are in very deep discussions right now with the World Bank. We are likely to start a new program with the World Bank that will kick in within the next year, that will assist us to expand infrastructure in our schools. I'm very optimistic, and this I can look you in the face and tell you, I'm very optimistic that by 2018, we will achieve the president's target of 100% transition. He's so committed to it. It's something he wants to do, and he has himself driven it by the resources he has mobilized, some of it actually from his own personal sources, some of it from people he has talked to directly, because some of the development partners we engaged with who are assisting us with the transition, the bilaterals especially, it's because the president himself has expressed that concern to them. In the meetings that the president has had before himself with the UN agencies, he has raised this matter very strongly. So it's a matter he's really focused on, and it's part of his program. And I am confident that we will achieve it by 2018.
All right, you've mentioned road to learning in our education system, and I think many Kenyans are concerned about the curriculum and what it imparts to the children. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the progress of the review of the curriculum by the Kenya Institute for Curriculum Development.
Very well, we've done so well. In fact, on all factors held constant, on the 6th of January, we'll have a national conference at which we will now bring our final proposal of the new curriculum. Subject to the clearance from the multi-stakeholders forum on the 6th of January, we will begin piloting the new curriculum. We want to be methodical, we want to be measured and focused in the way we do it. We don't want to hurry it. And I want to assure everyone that we are not doing this for anything else. We are not doing it for politics or whatever. We want to do it for us, for the country, for our children, to ensure that our children are getting the right education in the right environment, and most importantly, they're becoming competitive for the 21st century environment. So once we begin piloting the new curriculum, we'll get the results of the pilot, and then we'll begin a gradual implementation of the new curriculum. And I'm using the words very carefully, a gradual implementation of the new curriculum. It's not going to be a switch-on, switch-off affair, because in environments where that has been done, it has had devastating repercussions. We are not going to go that direction. We are so endowed, as a country, I'm telling you, we are so blessed. The brain trust that we build around the curriculum reform, it's amazing. We have a Kenyan, one of the most respected curriculum experts and researchers in the world, based in Canada, a Kenyan, who has come here, who's actually almost nearly for free, for what he would make a ton of money elsewhere, sitting here working with us. A huge group of our colleagues from the universities. We have drawn in on the brain trust of the country. Experienced practitioners in the sector. We have a huge group of people who formed the National Steering Committee, and we have been working, on this, gradually looking at a value-based education system that recognizes and respects talent pathways. Not everyone is going to be an academic. Those who are gifted in the arts, who are gifted in the sports, who are gifted in innovation and in the sciences will have a pathway through that curriculum. And we want to implement it gradually and follow all the steps, towards ensuring that we achieve a new curriculum. One thing that will change for sure is the system of evaluation. Okay. Because we want to move farther and farther away from an intensely examination-oriented system of education, to a situation where measurement and evaluation is done in a manner respectful of progress. That is why we are talking about a system of education that is more learner-centered, as it were. It is going to be a performance-based framework, so that we are looking at how the learners develop as they go along. Not necessarily, what is described broadly as a summative evaluation. We come 4 years down the road and we pass judgment on your life. No.
At one point. What do you think would be the lessons about, moving from one curriculum to another that we could learn from the 844 system that we saw being implemented in the late 80s? What do you think we can improve on from the way we got into the 844 system in about 89?
Gradual implementation. Yeah. Intensely consultative. Frankly speaking, since independence, this is going to be the most consultative framework of developing a curriculum that we've ever had since independence. It hasn't been this broad and this consultative, as it were, and involving all sectors of our society. I mean, Parliament will have to. We have been discussing with Parliament, the Education Committee in Parliament, and at some point, when we are done, Cabinet will pass the new curriculum, and we will take it to Parliament as policy. It will probably go there as a sessional paper that will outline the new curriculum, the new principles and frameworks of a new curriculum of the country and stuff like that. And in that process, a lengthy period of piloting, which did not happen before, which will give us an opportunity to understand what we should change and what we should improve on before we even begin the actual implementation of the constitution. Of the curriculum. We're beginning an intense capacity building framework, because we're not just doing, changing the curriculum. It comes with new responsibilities and new knowledge. New capacities are required for those who are providing or implementing the curriculum, namely the teachers. So we have begun again looking at the curriculum of preparing teachers, both at the pre-service level and what we need to do for in-service training and capacity building to improve the delivery levels of our teachers. And all this is different. Didn't happen when we introduced the 844. Look, we are at a different time in our life. We are not in 1980. We are in 2016. So we're doing things differently. And of course, something else which is different, we are reforming our curriculum in a different environment during what we describe broadly as knowledge explosion. There's plenty of knowledge around on curricula, across the board. There are people who have a lot of experiences to share. All these are positive, new things we are looking into and that are aiding our implementation of our new curriculum.
All right, so let's talk about, what the school calendar has been like. There were changes that were made, and then we saw, the burning of schools in second term. And I remember speaking with you earlier this year on that issue, and you were very resolute in your decision to not close the schools. There was a lot of public pressure, and, different people had different views on that. You stayed put with your decision. We've seen the results now after the end of the annual exam. Do you feel a sort of vindication, Dr. Matiang'i, for a lot of the decisions you have taken in your capacity as Cabinet Secretary?
Life is not a game. Honestly, I'm learning. I'm also learning. I've never been a minister before. This is the first time I'm a minister. I used to be an observer of public life. I never worked in public service before. This is my first time. I am also learning as we go along. But life is not a game. It's not a who will win today and who will win tomorrow and that kind of thing. I honestly believe, and I can tell you this from the bottom of my heart, I believe in honest, sincere contribution to one society. As simple as that. Everything we have done, when we have been given an opportunity to do it, it has been plain and sincere, based on decisions that we have taken that are right at that point in time. It's not expedient. I sat down with a broad section of stakeholders, and all of us looked at, and by the way, I had a ton of reports that had been done by the Kenya Secondary Schools Heads Association, Kenya National Examinations Council before, and everybody that suggested that we actually needed to relook at our school timetable and create a framework where we set aside an examination time for our children to do exams without any distraction and so on. And I asked them, so why haven't you implemented them? So everybody gives you their own reasons. And frankly, when I read through the reports, I thought they made a lot of sense. And I said, let's go that way. And look where we are today. So it turns out that all those good people who wrote those reports and all those good people who reflected on those things were right. That is the way we need to operate. That's why I keep saying that life is not a game. It's not about winning today or winning tomorrow or losing this way. I think life could be best lived very humbly and sincerely. Just do the thing you think is right and you feel from the bottom of your heart is right, not for any selfish interests or what have you. For us in public service, our interest number one is the people we serve, because we act in trust. These responsibilities we hold them in trust, and we work for the benefit of our people. Especially for me in the education sector, my heart goes out every day for our children. We are so blessed. God has been so kind and gracious to us as a country, blessed us with children, given these children to us as gifts on our hands. the least we can do as adults is raise up our children responsibly. We can't teach our kids when they are so young that there is another way to life than working hard. We can't, and it's not going to be so it has never changed. I mean, that's how I live, honestly. I mean, whether it's ICT, when I haggled with you guys about digital migration, it's the same story. That's the right thing to do for the country. It was right, it's done. It may not be politically correct, but it's the right thing to do. So we do the right thing. And if we all live truthfully, we would be fine. I mean, I don't live planning things or working about things. My president gives me an assignment, and my president expects me that I do the assignment faithfully, truthfully, and seriously. And so I do it. If I encounter a problem, I go back to him. I tell him, sir, I have encountered this problem. What do you think? He tells me, no, not this way, this way. We carry on. So all the assignments he has given me for this docket are clearly outlined, and I'm going to follow each one of them to the letter. At whatever cost.
All right, so your tenure here, and obviously at the previous ministry, or shall I just say your tenure as cabinet secretary, has evoked in the minds of Kenyans memories of the late Minister Michuki in terms of service delivery. And I'm sure you've heard this, many people saying, now that you're done with education, perhaps you can move to this other ministry and this other one. I'd really like to hear your thoughts on two things. One, your thoughts on that in terms of your service. And then lastly on, what structures you think you have put in place in the Ministry of Education that should you move to another, which is, at the privilege of the president, that whatever structures and measures that you've put in place, will live beyond your time here, so that we're not nostalgic, for example, about the Michuki rules that were in the Matatu sector. What lasting structural changes do you think you've put in place here?
Yvonne, let me tell you something. I have two ambitions in this life. I speak very plainly about these things. I have two ambitions in this life, only two ambitions. One, to live for God, my Creator, and to live truthfully to my Father above, God Almighty, because we live, we are alive, we breathe because of the blessings of God. There's no reason why I am not the one sleeping or lying in a hospital bed right now. It's because of the blessings of God. So my ambition is, whatever I do, wherever I find myself, it doesn't matter, and I don't worry about those things myself. The God who takes care of birds of the air takes care of me and everyone else. To live for God, that's my ambition in this small life, in this world. My second ambition is to serve my president and my country in such a manner as to bring glory and honor to God. For a president to ask you to do an assignment, he takes a risk, first of all, and the risk he takes is that you will actually implement his plan, because he's the one who ultimately takes responsibility for whatever you do. So for a president, for an individual who has gone around this country and been elected president, to sit up one morning and when he's putting people together, he calls you up to his team and says, I want you to do this assignment, is a great, great level of trust. And that's why I keep saying every day, I pray to God that I don't do anything that will bring my president to disrepute or to dishonor after he has bestowed that amount of trust in the work that I do here. And therefore, in that same trust of doing the right thing to ensure that I implement the president's plan is my utmost commitment from my heart to serve my fellow Kenyans with everything that the Lord will give me. Even if it means waking up at 4 a.m. in the morning and going to the content, I have no problem. That's what God has willed that I do, and I will do it. So as I said, I'm not in this kind of conspiracy or plan of sorts, so that I can tell you this is what I'm going to do now, I do there. I don't live that way. Yeah, unfortunately, I live that simply, You wake up in the morning, pray with my family and go do my thing and carry on where God will guide me. And life continues. Everything we have done, everywhere I have served, is institutional. This is institutionalized. To get to a decision, some of these decisions, we sit together. Here in the Ministry of Education, I introduced something called a directors meeting. I usually call all the directors in this ministry. We sit around the table and I shared with them very honestly my thoughts. I tell them this is what I'm thinking and this is how I think we need to go ahead. And the directors advise me. Many of the directors we have in this ministry are very experienced people, very educated people. Education is, they've been in the sector for a long time. So usually I have 3 meetings which I value a lot here. One is the directors meeting. 2 is the coordination meeting, the central coordination meeting. I usually sit down with my 3 PSs and their administration leaders, the senior directors of administration, and we have a coordination meeting when we look at the sector-wide issues and look at what we need to do here and so on. And then thirdly is my consultative meeting with the agencies under the ministry, the parastatals under the ministry. I call in the CEOs, sometimes with their chairs, and from time to time we have a meeting to discuss issues. All these are institutional things. Each one of us, you can see we are a big team. Each one of us is playing a role. These institutions are here. We came and found them here. We will go and leave them here. The practice of how we deliver in these institutions may change from time to time, but the institutions are intact, they're present. The regulations, the best. Do you realize, Yvonne, that we have not amended any law since I arrived here? We have not amended any law. The Basic Education Act remains the same. The guidelines remain the same. The simple thing that all of us need to understand is this. If we woke up every morning and each one of us did their fair share and made a honest contribution, this country will be great. That's all. And by the way, I've traveled the world over. There are many, many things we need to thank God for as Kenyans. One of them is this. We have a country that is fully institutionalized. We have a constitution, arms of government that have been set. The laws and regulations are very clear. Some of our institutions have come of age. What lets us down is individual weaknesses on the part of many of us. We are sometimes driven by greed or interest other than just service, and then, we get things wrong. Otherwise, this is a country that is blessed in amazing ways. You just need to step out of here and go to some of the countries, even in our own neighborhood, or even in other regions, Southern Africa or Central Africa, and you will know how we are blessed as a country. Our institutions are intact. What we need to do is actually make those institutions work. Let me ask you a question. Do you know that when we managed the exams this year, we didn't hire a single external person? Not one. We didn't hire a single external person. Everyone who was involved is either a board member at NEC, a director of the ministry, what have you. All these people, we are here, which demonstrates one thing: we just simply can't do it. Let's just get up, dust ourselves up, get our act together, and get the work done. That's all.
Finally, your reaction to Kenyans who want you to move to various other ministries and sort of sort them out, as it were. And I dare ask, there's a lot of people that wonder what a Matiang'i presidency would look like.
As I told you, I have only 2 ambitions in this life. And those ambitions do not include what will happen tomorrow, because that is not in my province. I don't, I truly, from the bottom of my heart, I could preach this from a pulpit in any particular congregation. I believe in God Almighty, the creator of the universe. And God knows all our lives, and God has given us opportunities to do things. Why do we worry about things and so on and so forth? God will provide for us. God will always guide us. Secondly, I serve at the pleasure of the president. And let me tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, and I can say this from on top of KICC, one of the things that I thank the Lord for is serving under Uhuru Kenyatta as the president of the country. Everybody will say what they will say. I have worked with him. I know him personally. I have seen him at work. President Kenyatta is probably the best opportunity for this country to move to a new level where performance and result-oriented leadership means something. And I enjoy working with the president. And a lot of people asked me before, and not me alone, even some of my colleagues in cabinet, how could you take a pay cut to come and be a minister? Leave a job where you're earning more money to come and be a minister in Kenya where you're earning less money than you are earning. And I tell them, if you sat in one room with President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, and they spoke to you very well, and you saw President Kenyatta's passion for the country, you work for nothing. He loves the country so much, and he inspires you at every turn and bend. Look, with all these difficulties, we encounter in these jobs we do you think you can survive in this job if you really didn't have a leader who really encourages you when things are really hard, who tells you, no, don't worry, it will be okay, let's keep working. Like when the schools were burning in second term. I mean, it's natural. I can confess to you, there are times in public life, not even in this ministry alone. I was in lands for about 8 months or so as acting minister. When you meet very difficult and challenging circumstances, I was in ICT, when you guys switched off your TVs and so on. If you didn't have a solid president who will tell you, no, this is the right thing, you believe it in your heart, and it's the right thing we need to do for our country, this is not about us, it's about our country. You wouldn't really, sometimes you would be tempted as a human being to say, watch I cannot do other things. But you see, we are privileged. We have good leaders who have the country at heart, who are committed to serving this nation, and they have led us well. And what we all need to do is, and that's why sometimes I wonder, why do we even get distracted about things and so on? We have work to do. Let's get this work done. If you woke up in the morning, if your job was to sweep this floor, you sweep it nicely so that the other person who comes and works from there finds it clean. If yours is to make tea, you make your cup of tea nice and make sure you entertain the people. And we carry on. That's how we are supposed to live. So I serve at the pleasure of the president, so I don't even sleep or wake up wondering about, where I'm going to be or what I'm going to do. The president has given me specific instructions. They are very clear. He has given me an assignment, very specific, very defined. Anytime I've had doubt, I go to him and he clarifies things to me. I enjoy working with my president. And anything else about the future and what have you, political ambitions, whatnot, that's not for me to even think about. As a person who believes in God, I can't even spare a thought for that. I do what I'm doing now. Tomorrow belongs to my Creator.
Indeed. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Pleasure.
All right. Yeah. Asante.